March 13th, 2023. This is the S&P 500 E-Futures Mini 2000 tick chart on the Thinkorswim platform. This is what the chart looked like today. Just go down to the description. You can see where I timestamped my trades as well as any, I guess, points of interest that I saw. It was a pretty choppy day. And keep in mind, there wasn't really any news catalyst except for what happened over the weekend with, some bank failures with Silicon Valley Bank. But it didn't really seem to affect the market too much. If it did, it didn't really seem to affect the S&P 500 too much. Now, this orange line here is actually my 100-day simple moving average on the daily, and this is my 200-day simple moving average. And on the daily chart, you can see that prices are actually below it at the moment. And this is how I drew up my charts today. I took a total of 3 trades. Unfortunately, all 3 were losers. I don't think I was in tune with the market, and I got faked out a couple of times. So I'll go through those. After my 3 losing trades in a row, I just decided to just sit back and just watch price action unfold and not take any more trades because, well, just kind of live to fight another day. So let's get to it. The pre-market was, well, it's pretty choppy. As you can see from Friday, it gapped up and then it just kind of chopped around. I don't trade the pre-market because it's like very early in the AM on Pacific Standard Time. I did see this channel going down and then it kind of consolidated, moved up, and then there's this big channel that kind of kept going down. And before the market opened, when I was looking at the chart right about here, I thought, okay, there might be a big trading range today, and I wasn't sure if the 100-day or 200-day simple moving average would actually be kind of an effect today, because it was kind of at least the 200 moving day average, and you can consider maybe the 100-day, but they're close enough on the daily that you could consider both of them as pretty much overlapping, and they did reject prices down. So I just kind of had that in the back of my mind. And then let's just get into it. So when prices started moving up, it's chopping within this channel that I drew. And I drew this channel going up. It touched nicely 3 times and touched only maybe once at the top. And it moved down and then it opened. So here, immediately, I did see a potential second entry short. Well, not a potential, but it is a second entry short. I don't know if there was a trade there necessarily, though, because it did have first entry short, second entry short. This is a pretty good signal bar. It's below the EMA. But this is also during the very first minute of regular hours when things just opened. And even though the bank failure, like Silicon Valley and I think Signature Bank were both taken over the weekend, it was too early for me to really know if that was going to have an effect or not. Turns out it wasn't really that big. Well, it's a big deal, but it turned out it didn't really affect the market too much. So this is certainly a trade that was possible because it came just right up to the EMA and it came down. And I did have this trend channel preliminarily drawn from the top here to bottom. But again, I said this is the first minute. Just wait and see. Prices continue moving down. They chopped and they're confirming this trend channel now. Continues. It now breaks down and it goes down and touches this. It doesn't really touch the low of the day made in the pre-market. Chops around. I'm just kind of sitting, watching. It looks like it's a slightly wider channel. I made it a 2-tier channel with this the midline. Throughout the day, I did see a lot of chop, and there were a lot of second entries that set up, but not necessarily second entries that were high probability. So prices continue moving up, chops around, and I do see this now. I see a new high, first entry long, and a second entry long. This is a potential second entry long failure because here it looked like it triple tested or touches, double top tier, and this one didn't quite make it to the top. It did break out of this channel first break and looked like it made a new high or tried to make a new high, but certainly if there was a trade that I thought was good, it would be maybe this one. A trade worth taking. I didn't take it though because I wasn't quite sure, but this is a decent signal bar. It's pretty far from the EMA, so there's enough room to run down. The one thing I wasn't sure of, it's very counter trend to a pretty strong bullish move that just came up. So it could break and continue a second leg up, could start a second leg. So I left that trade alone. Turns out it would have worked out pretty well. Then I saw another new low here, first entry short, second entry short. Now the second entry short, I wasn't sure if it's going to be a failure at the time because it just ticked slightly below and then it closed up here, a little bit below the open. If this is more bearish, like closed down here, I would have considered taking a trade, like one tick below. But then, since the EMA is coming right up against it, I was a little hesitant because at the time I also had this trading range extending out to here. So it just kind of all added up, just said, maybe I'll be picking the top here, so just leave that one alone. Turns out if I did treat it as a second entry short, I would have gotten stopped out, but it turns out to be a failed second entry short. So once it broke above this guy and it broke above these guys and it closed on this candle, I don't know that I would have treated it as a good trade either, because this is what you see. Who knows if it's going to come breaking back down. Prices continue moving up, chops around. It's jumping above and below the EMA. So it's a little confusing right now for me to see what's actually happening. Then it goes up again, chops. It's coming back below the EMA. So at this point, I'm just kind of sitting on hands, seeing like all this noise. It's hard for me to tell what the bias is because it's just a trading range pretty much. But I wasn't sure if the trading range was kind of captured here and here. I eventually drew it up to here, but that shows up later, and I was able to verify that later. Anyways, prices continue chopping around. I don't know what to do, so I don't do anything. Continues chopping around, and I see a potential trading range within this bigger one, and I draw it. I'm just kind of watching. So I see a potential breakout here, a failed breakout, but it kind of holds, and then it does finally come back, touch the EMA. It's holding against the EMA. So I did see like a new high here, first entry long, potential second entry long, but I don't like the looks of this signal bar, plus it closed below the EMA. So, I don't see it could be a trade, but it had to be pretty aggressive, and that's not what I wanted to do. Turns out it would have worked, but you don't know. If this had closed a little bit more bullish, maybe I would have taken that trade because it was kind of respecting EMA, but then you have to keep in mind that the EMA was rejecting prices previously. Chops around. I do see like a potential measure move from here, and then I drew a second one. I also drew this big guy here, starting from down there, and I just placed it roughly right here to see if it would go up and touch this one at 39.40. Prices continue moving. Breaks down below the EMA. So as you can see, these are very, very big candles relative to the overall price action. Like look at these big guys, and it's very congested, even on the way up, on the way down. On the way down does have some clarity sometimes, but most of the time it's just like these big, big candles that are just kind of chopping back and forth. So it's a little hard to trust a good trade because you'd have to put your stop one tick below your signal bar. But if the signal bar is huge, then you're already, even if you're going for one-to-one risk reward, if the signal bar is huge, you just have to keep that in mind. Now you're asking for an equally huge move up, unless you get a scalp for just 1 point, which you could, and there's nothing against that. I do that pretty much for most of my strategy, but it's just the candles are just so big in range that it just made things very hard to trust. Prices continue chopping up. Now they're above the EMA. Looks like it's respecting it. It's kind of bounced off of it. Now it breaks down below. I mean, there's no strong, consistent trend. And even if for a trading range, it's kind of an ugly trading range. It's not like, I mean, you could draw maybe one here and you could count this big, big, big breakout here, but it eventually comes back in. And if you drew the top of the trading range here, same thing. You have a big, ugly breakout that fails, comes back in. You have another smaller breakout and another one. So it's just, it wasn't as clean a trading range. So I found it a little challenging to take good trades or find good trades. Prices continue chopping. I draw a second trading range here. So I'm watching. So I see a potential breakout here. Comes back. EMA is coming up to support it now. Chops back into the range. So this is where I take my first trade. I said, okay, this is pretty much like a double top, a clean double top. Well, not clean, but it is a very distinct double top. It's a trading range that I think I'm seeing here. Count this as one new high. See a first entry long, comes down. I see this form, and I think, okay, this is a pretty decent signal bar. Then it's coming right against this trading range. So I'm going to put my trade one tick above on the next candle. Well, actually, I put my order, and then when that candle closed, it fills me, comes down, almost takes me out, and then it takes me out. So that was kind of like a fake out on my part. It just trapped me. I was kind of, well, I was a little sad, not sad, but kind of like frustrated that it didn't work out the way I thought it would, because it seemed to be giving all the right signals, enough room to the EMA, bottom of the trading range, and triple test, but just how it went, I got stopped out. First trade was a losing trade. Prices continue moving down. Now it's outside the trading lower part of the trading range. Goes back in. Looks like it's going to break above the EMA. For sure, it's above the EMA now, and now EMA is holding. I see a potential second entry long. Count this as a new high, first entry long. I see this potentially setting up for another second entry long, but I wasn't ready to take it because this candle is huge. So if I, take it one tick above here, my stop would have to be down here. So that means I'd be asking for at least maybe, well, if I'm just going for a scalp, then the risk is kind of high. So I just left that one alone. Goes up. It looks like it would have worked for a scalp, and then most likely got a runner. But in my case, I don't think I would have gotten a runner. If I put my trade here, most likely I get my scalp here, and then I move my stop from down here all the way up to here, and then this candle would have taken out my runner. So would have been a pretty noisy trade. Prices continue moving. It's coming back down. Now it breaks below this trading range again. And here I draw this faint trading range because I'm just wondering, okay, is there a potential top of the trading range here, like an overlapping trading range, and then another low here, because it kind of triple tested here. And if you extended it far enough, you could consider maybe 4 tests. So I just thought, okay, there might be something there. It does bounce off of it, comes up. I do see this as a potential fail breakout. But even though there's a fail breakout and a potential second entry short, you'd have to count the second entry short from here as a new low. This just barely breaks below, but on a different time frame, smaller time frame, tick time frame, then this is probably clear one leg down. However, if you make that argument, then you have to say there's probably a potential second leg down here, because if you want to just pick one but not pick the other, and then you'd have to encounter this guy. It's hard to have a good set of rules if you're kind of changing it on the fly. So I counted it as it has to deliberately move one solid tick below. So this will be the first entry short, comes up, and I see a potential second entry short and a potential fail breakout. Now, I was considering putting my trade entry right here and hoping to ride this down. What stopped me was, even though this is a strong bullish move up, I was concerned that it might continue again. But in hindsight, I did notice that when I draw this, I didn't have this clearly drawn at the time. If I did have this in place, I could see this as a big overshoot, this big impulse move all the way up. And most likely it's going to make the same big move back down. So in hindsight, I think it might have been a worthwhile trade to take. And it turns out that's exactly what happens. If this is your trading channel, then it breaks right back down below. And like a yo-yo, it chops and then it goes right back up. So it wants to maybe test a new high. So this was probably a potential setup for an actual trade, but I just didn't interpret it and read it fast enough in real time. Prices continue chopping. It's staying within the trading range that I drew, which is this guy. Breaks out below, continues chopping around. So I'm just kind of sitting, watching, and waiting. Breaks down further. EMA is pushing prices down. So here's a potential first entry short. Comes up. Okay, I'm thinking maybe it's going to make this measure move going up. This is technically a second entry short. The signal bar is so-so, but I just didn't want to take that trade. And this is where I saw a first entry short, second entry short, and this is my mistake. So when I read this, I read it as first entry short, second entry short. It didn't quite make the measure move. When it came up here, I'm thinking, okay, obviously it's a failed second entry short. So it broke out of this trading range. It made a new extreme and it came down. And most likely, in hindsight, it could have been a first entry short, second entry short, and a lower high. But at the time I read it as first entry short, second entry short, failed second entry short, because I did Mickey around with the idea of like maybe the trading channel is this way. And there's a smaller overshoot. And so it needs to make a new high here. It turns out that that wasn't the correct way of thinking, because when this formed here, the second entry short's actually confirmed up here. So it's already too far away to say it's a failure, in my opinion. So it's more likely a lower high, and that's exactly what happened. So when I put my entry here, after this green bar formed, it actually filled me and then immediately reversed. And it took my stop right down here. So that happened all on this one candle. And that was pretty, discouraging. Then it came down, and so now what I saw here is like, okay, well, if this is a new high, this is a first entry long. This is very clear a second entry long. So I go, I'm going to try this again. Maybe it's going to break in. It's going to be a failed breakout, go back into these trading ranges. And then at the time I saw, okay, well, this is a decent signal bar because it's what I saw at the time. I said, okay, it's going to reverse. And actually, it's not a decent signal bar. I saw it as a green bar, which it is, but it's at the halfway point, probably a little bit below half. So I should have had a little more cautious look to it. But I said, okay, I'm going to have my order here ready just in case. It fills me and immediately stops me out again. So that was, kind of discouraging and foolish. At that point, I said I lost 3 trades in a row. I'm just going to, sit on my hands at this point. And even if I did have my entry here and I had no stop, it wouldn't have filled me here. I would still be sitting through this noise, and that would be pretty risky. And then it continues going down. EMA is holding. Now, keep in mind, had I actually taken this as a lower high and shorted here, even though this is a pretty decent, this is not a good signal bar for a lower high, because I'd rather have this as a red bar, but, it did have a bullish bar and it came reversed down. I mean, I don't know if I would have taken it one tick below here, below this guy after it closed, or maybe I would have tried to back it up and maybe try to enter here, but then I would have gotten filled. But let's say you did get filled on this short, you would have been able to you would have gotten a pretty good trade out of it, even if you had a runner. You kept it maybe 1 or 2 ticks down. But I think this candle would have eventually taken me out if this one did not. So at this point, I just kind of sat on my hands and said, "This is not my day. I don't have my mind right. I'm not seeing seeing things correctly. I'm getting a little eager, and I know that's just a recipe for more losses." And up to now, I just noticed like, okay, it's been pretty choppy. There's not been any really good clean breaks. So just thinking ahead, I just said, okay, well, maybe today isn't my day. Just sit back, just try to learn, take pretend trades, if you will, and just see if they would have worked out. And then mark anything that I saw that would have been worthwhile. And there are second entries, like you could say there's new high, first entry long, second entry long, but this is like a neutral bar. And I saw a bunch of those kind of not the best clean high probability setups all over the place. So that just kind of made me think, okay, well, just stop, calm down, and watch the rest of the day. That's kind of what I did. And you can see it wasn't very clean movements. There's just like a lot of chop. There could be a new low here, first entry short. Technically, the second entry short, even if you did a visual first entry short, second entry short, this isn't a very good signal bar to go short on. So you can say it's maybe a failure, but it just broke above the EMA, and I'm not 100% sure. And also had this trend channel to deal with, and it didn't really come down and bounce off the top. It's actually get toward the top of the trend channel, so it might reverse back down. So it's just kind of like one of those days where, to me, it wasn't super clear on where prices were going. So I took 3 trades, 3 shots, and they lost. And so yeah, just gotta study some more, work on more of my psychology, and yeah, hope this was helpful.